Disconnected. Son of a gun. Oh, 20% battery left. Beans. These are my can of beans. Smells delicious. What's up, Anna? We had to restart. Got done with her exercise and she cut out on us. Son of a gun. I am not a baby. I'm a grown man. Not anything I ever did. No! Not the Gina boy. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, bye. Where you going? I do. I love me. And you're okay. You're a good person, Jana. Okay, what am I doing? Okay. Checking on the turkey. A little bit more steps in. What's up, Jana? Jana! Jana. Jana, Brazilian? Yeah, just for a little bit. Just so it's not too low. Because we biked 15 miles. 15, a little bit over a half. 15.6 miles biked. And we're only at 7,615 steppies. So I'm trying to make sure it at least gets over 10,000 on stream. The stream cut out. That's why it died. Yep. Kind of just died. Kind of strange. Sometimes it does that though. Sometimes it does that weird glitch where I can't get back onto it. I don't know if it's a YouTube issue or if it's a Motorola issue. It could just be my connection, too. I'm not for sure. The ninja. Ah, okay. So yeah, it was a connection issue. You know, some phones, it used to give me a warning. It used to like swirl with it. Lately, these new Motorola's don't. It acts like it's the same quality. You don't get bars like on StreamYards. You get bars. With YouTube Mobile, you don't. So I thought I was live, but must not have been live. Or I thought there was a strong connection. It wasn't. Yeah. Be like, Motorola, why is your phone so shit for live streaming on YouTube? Well, it's supposed to storm today. I don't know if that's still the case, but. Oh, by the way, my turkey. Oh my goodness, it smells so delicious in my place right now. Fantastic. The turkey is smelling delicious. Mostly because I put a lot of hot sauce. So it smells like olive oil and hot sauce. I notice I'm getting way stronger at lifting up weights or just weight. Picking it up like instead of having it down low, like hanging my arm low. If I put it up to a 90-degree angle, I've been doing all those overheads. But holding up that big old can of beans, I could actually tell the difference from just holding it at low to putting it at a 90-degree angle. That's pretty cool. Big old can of beans. Cool. Tortilla. Does she have a tortilla press? I had one. I gave it to my mom. She did it by hand with a roller. Cool. That's what I do too. Tortilla, tortilla. Natilla, latilla. Black lady names. Dear. We got a deer. I can't have any though. Yeah, what you gonna have for your afternoon festival? Excuse me. What's on the menu today there, Brett? Cool. Sounds yummy. Always got the yummy. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, well, mostly it's just how their attitude was. I'm sure they were dirtier though. And I mean, some were probably stronger. Of how more likely they were to be on roids. Yeah, Dick Murdoch was supposedly really good at punching people. I don't know. I mean, it looks like just, what is that called? Buggy whipped armed guy, with a big belly. But supposedly he could knock out people really quickly with his punch. I don't know if that's just, the boys sticking up for the boys, or, maybe he could knock out more than average. Yeah. I've heard those stories. A whole bunch of them. He was huge, yeah. Yep. Yeah, obviously not the best. All I know is JBL's a badass. He beat the shit out of your mama. Hey, he did a little bit better than. Obviously, he's fucking bigger than everybody, though, so it's not really. Kind of makes sense. But, yeah, that was the thing, wasn't it? I don't know. Do you think he actually got. I mean, he was supposedly drunk, but. I think, JBL's kind of silly, too. I feel like he might have took the punch and, like, oh, fuck. And just sat back. I don't know if that's an official knockout. I think that was just JBL was drunk and he was really surprised that Joey Styles fucking punched him in the face. And he was like, oh shit. Just sat back. Cause he actually fought in that fucking brawl for all. He didn't. I think he was like second place, right? So technically, that's not too bad. Was he second place? Who was second place in the brawl for all? Yeah, he got beat up a whole bunch of times. He was willing to challenge. Like, I think he even challenged Kurt Angle. Like, he'd playfully challenged, obviously. He'd leg dive people. Yeah. Well, he still won that one fight, didn't he? Then he got the who the fuck was it? Who did dropped out of the tournament? Did he? That's look all that up again. I feel like he won one though. Yeah. Severin. Dan Severin, the man beast. Or no. That's the Predator, right? Dan Severin, the Predator. Did he? Yeah, that's for sure. Gotta be a little bit more careful on those rocks. Kind of get used to them being frozen together. They don't slip apart. They kind of slip now. So I gotta watch out. Hopefully I don't take a little dive one of these days. Take a double. Yeah, I thought he took down Mark Miro, but I wasn't for sure. But yeah, everybody knows that Mark Miro has golden gloves. So I think he's a little bit better fighter than people give him credit. I mean, on the internet, everybody's calling him a big old pussy, which, I mean, he might be, but he also, it seems he's a little bit better than even the average athlete in fighting. Yeah. He's getting a little chubby again. He was chubby and then he lost the weight. Now he's getting chubby again. Yeah. Did you see the picture of JBL on Undertaker's podcast? Boy is getting chubby. At least in the face. You gotta see the thumbnail they used for his face. Blackman didn't like, yeah. Punched him in the face like 7 times or whatever it was. Well, he lost a little bit of weight when he started that protein company. He had a 6-pack again. So he got down to really good shape when he retired. But now he's getting fat again. I forget what it is. He had some kind of protein drink thingy, and he got in good shape. And that was probably when he was climbing those mountains. That's when he was in good shape, but now that was probably like, I don't know, 10 years ago now. So, is he 66 years old now? Well, that makes sense, yeah. Obviously, you get a little chubby when you're getting old. You're 60? Yeah. You ever get to, have you ever heard about him? Was he, because he's from Texas, right? So was that a big deal? I mean, he's kind of trying to be racist though, but that was his character. But were you guys hearing about him when he was in his big, run? Yeah, I'm sure he will. Yeah, you gotta look at the Undertaker's podcast thumbnail of him. Fucking big old balloon of a head. Does he? Yeah. I can't lie, when whatever game he's put in, especially when there was infinite finishers on the wrestling game. I love doing JBL's clothesline from hell. I don't know why, it's so satisfying to watch. Well, because he could just like run forward. I remember just fucking ripping my brother's head off with it on the video game. Each time he'd try to get up, just keep on cracking him with the clothesline from hell. No, I bet. Okay, at least we got 10,000 steppies on this stream. We're gonna head back and get our overheads and curlies in, and get a bit of exercise bike, so I'm gonna do that I don't know if I've heard any of those people. Java, maybe Joyce. Joyce? Surprised Dre the King Lawler's still alive. Wonder how old he'll live to be. And also Ric Flair. Which one's dying first, Rick or Jerry? Jicker, Ric Flair or Jerry the King Lawler? Which one? I think that's a good one. That's a hard choice, I think. Technically, Rick's been pretty damn stable, to be fair, since his heart condition. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, Jerry keeps on having strokes. It only takes one to kill you. I think Rick's been technically pretty stable compared to Jerry. Okay. What about? I think this one. Maybe who can I add to make it more interesting? Shit. Oh, okay. Oh, I had a non-wrestler just to make it more interesting. Okay, who's dying last here? Ric Flair, Jerry the King Lawler, Morgan Freeman, or Vince McMahon. Who's the last to die? I think Morgan's the oldest. Even though he looks still way healthier than fucking Vince. Whatever Vince did, I mean, most of the steroids that fucked him. Got a big old fucking fat head. Now when he's getting off the juice probably slowly, he's losing weight. He's got all the skin folds. that's true. And I mean, Vince, I don't know. Actually, I'd have to look that up. I wonder how long Morgan Freeman's parents lived. He's doing really good. Vince's mom made it to 102. Vince's dad, though, made it to what, 60? 70? She 103. She was 100 and something. I think, oh, really? You think Vince will last long? Yeah, he does got that money. Yeah, for shits and giggles, I want to say Morgan Freeman. I love Morgan Freeman. I don't know when's the last time he showed his face, though. I don't know what he's looking like today. I've seen some Bruce Willis. I don't know who the other guy is playing. So I'm going to have to give the win to Donnie over here. Hey, Pete Man. I've never heard of that play. So I'm not saying it's boring, but I've never heard of it. Donnie. Donnie. Yeah, actually, I mean, Bruce, maybe not his movies, but right now I bet he's kind of interesting. Actually, I forget if he stopped talking, though. But I'm sure he was kind of interesting when his dementia was in full swing. It's like, I gotta go play on the set. About an hour. For that, like 4 hours. Skibbity. Kind of light. Is that the real Bart Dimmerton? Is that the real Bart Dimmerton? He's giving me a like? The all went off.
Getting down on the floor, and now he's trying to like he's handcuffing his fucking hands behind him. Well, there's a 6-foot chain. But Fatu's trying to act like that his hands are handcuffed behind him. Everybody don't. He's not fully committing to acting like that because he kind of knows, but he's still trying to keep his arms behind him while he's not fucking. And then Drew whips him with a belt, and all of the agents are trying to stop it. Everything. It was long and it was horrible. And Fatu, whether he might have just got dinged. He was bleeding a touch from the head, not like bleeding bad or anything, but it just immobilized and beaten up, and other people having to come and help him. I think it probably should have been. And again, this is something I go back to with Vince in the old days before he lost his mind. And before that, everything just fell apart, a guy like that, he wouldn't have needed anybody to come help him for a long time after you saw his debut. Hey, tell me what you thought of this, and then let me tell you what I thought maybe they should have not done or whatever.
I mean, you described it pretty well. It was a train wreck of a segment. The agents can never stop or do anything. But they're all out there. The handcuff, who was the last? Was it handcuffs and Becky and Lyra, whatever her name is?
Yes, yes.
That was the last time the handcuff thing didn't work. This one was such a bad idea to begin with, because even if it worked, you're hanging him over the thing with the handcuffs. It was poorly thought out. It broke down. They kept going back to it. I don't think any of the fans cared about this a few weeks ago. I think it's gotten worse. This is, again, like Hobbs, close to Fatu's hometown. And I don't think the build to this match has done anything for either one of these guys, actually.
Once that
Drew's a non-entity right now. It doesn't feel like this feud matters.
And that's it was guys that, two of the guys that we were most interested in just this time last year, or, up until several months ago, and then suddenly poor Drew got Iggy'd out back in January or whatever it was, and Jacob he's the cleanest, nicest werewolf you'll ever see. It reminds me of when they tried to get, I swear to God, Rikishi, when he was Fatu in 1995 or whatever, when they cleaned him up and remember the gimmick, he's going to make a difference.
Oh yeah, I can never forget that.
To appeal to the hip, young, urban kids and tell them to stay off drugs and, oh Christ. But the point is, when they realized what with Jacob Fatu, he was the werewolf. He came in, he was running crazy. I love you, Solo. When they broke him up with Solo, he should have beat the fuck out of Solo. Boom, 1, 2, 3, and got him away from it. And he was starting to get, obviously, the babyface momentum, but work with that, but don't turn him babyface, because the reason he was becoming popular, getting over, is because he was this wild, fucking, dangerous motherfucker that could do all this shit. So instead of them trying to normalize him, instead, my God, he broke up with Solo because of the bad blood in the bloodline. But now he's on the loose, and you could have him work with anybody. Let him be a kind of a stone cold type of guy, where he was turned by the people before they turned him in the ring. But he could, at the same time, he could work with another heel, because he's just nuts. And that's where they could have explored the prison background when they said, well, the Bloodlines pull is how that he was able to get signed to a WWE contract because of his record. And now that we got him, what do we do with him? We can't get rid of him. And have the general managers go, my God, this guy's an insurance liability. Whether he's going to hurt one of the fans or somebody that we don't know. And he wouldn't have needed to wrestle every goddamn week. Sometimes just have him do insurance liability things where he's mad at somebody, he's trying to get him, and fucking there's an incident in the parking lot. And just keep him an island unto himself at some level until, and then with the dental problem he had and had to take several months off, violate his probation. Because you should have already been telling the story if he was in prison to begin with. That's why that they didn't have him before. That's why the family didn't even want to bring him in, because he's dangerous. And he's certainly got a mugshot somewhere. Show the fucking thing. Do a package. Even if he never made the news, have some newscaster California man was arrested today in conjunction with, well, over the mugshot, and if did he make the newspaper? Tell the story. But that's when he was young, and then you could start telling a story from people in the family. He was around the wrong people, whatever it was, to make him a sympathetic ex-con who fell in at a young age with the wrong crowd and a poor neighborhood, whatever the fuck. But that's why he's fucking crazy. And then one of the family members, not a wrestler, just a young teenage boy that's his cousin or his nephew or whatever the fuck. Maybe one of them that helps tell the story of how Jacob Fatu wound up on the wrong side of the law is sitting front row some night when the goddamn heel fucking says, fuck you. And that's how you get Jacob Fatu to turn babyface. The heel grabs the kid over the fucking rail and is gonna kill him, and here comes Jacob and a blah blah blah. I sound like Pat Patterson now, but it's just the highlights, but that's the story. And then you go and you fill it in. And at that point, then you've got all the people on his side because he was a young man that made mistakes. And then you, like I said, you can do a parole violation for shit, paperwork error, and get sympathy on him. And you can give weekly reports. He's still fucking locked up, but he wants to get out bad. Maybe the goddamn heel is the one that turned him in. Instead, they've washed him and cleaned him up and give him spotless tights, and he's not a werewolf. He's goddamn Newfoundland.
Never heard that comparison before.
Well, see? Just what I'm saying don't make any sense to you.
What you're saying is world's better than what they've done, although I would replace the teenage kid with either an old lady or the Tonga kid. Get him a
But I didn't want to beat up an old lady.
No, you get like some old worker who could just take a bump over the rail. One last payday. That's the answer to Mae Young somewhere. A Samoan Mae Young.
Hey, they did that with goddamn, who was, it was Eric Weingroff. George White, in ICW in Lexington, at the high school gym they used to run. They did a deal where the heels were wrestling George Weingroff, and Eric is George's little brother. At a time, he was only like 14 or 15. And as they're beating up the baby faces, I can't remember who the heels were. Savage may have been involved. Rolls out and grabs Eric Weingroff and rolls him in and starts kicking his shit out of him. Because Eric was just walking by the ring, right? And they're shooting this for television. And they're going to explain what happened, when they voice it over later. But what the people saw was this fucking heel just rolled out and grabbed this kid from walking down the aisleway and threw him in the ring and started kicking the shit out of him. And it started a riot. They said, he's grabbed one of us. And they fucking hit the ring and blah, blah, blah. So, but, now that's been overdone too, but you can always tell when it's set up now. Nevertheless, poor Jacob, we knew him well. But now he's just that. And that had to be gimmick handcuffs too, because if you close legitimate handcuffs, one click and they ain't coming open. So I don't know where they got this fucking bad special effects. That's what I didn't think about. Brian, when I did my ring worn and ring used sale, I still have like 2 or 3 pair of handcuffs from Smoky Mountain Wrestling's Rage in a Cage fucking match. I should put those up for bid somewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And handcuff keys are standard, as we've said many times. So, folks, always remember, carry your handcuff keys. That's a public service announcement.
Yeah, there's some advice for you criminals out there from Jim Cornette.
Hey, for the past 30-something years, I've carried a handcuff key on my key ring.
But if they arrest you, they're going to take away your keys.
Well, I might have to get somebody else out of something.
No, that's just being a good friend, actually.
See? There you see? So then we're going to skip over a couple of things and just hit the interesting parts of this program. Now, I don't even know about interesting being a proper word, but you can't see Rhea Ripley now without seeing Io Sky. Rhea does the in-ring interview, and it's about Io. You attacked my Io. Io. And then Io came out with constipation face, and they set up Io and Jade in the main event. But Christ, I thought when they broke up the team and put Rhea back in the title picture, we didn't have to see this little conjoined twin hanging off of her fucking hip.
No, it's not going away.
And then Bayley wrestled Alexa. And then there was a lot of stuff backstage. And then we get to Royce Keys. Brian, who could have thought? The guy's got a great backstory. He grew up in poverty, but he had the family that took care of him, but he's been shot, or his brother was shot, or the story that he tried to tell once 4 years ago on AEW, and then they fucking switched him heel. I don't know, whatever the fuck. Here it is. Here was the video. He's from down the road in East Palo Alto. And they had the family pictures and the story, and basically they have told his true backstory that was true when he was Powerhouse Hobbs, but in 2 minutes they conveyed more of it here than they did in 5 years in AEW. Or am I just imagining this?
No, there was some production behind this. There was some time, obviously, they put in putting this together. I thought it was really well done, and we have not seen him at all. Royal Rumble, and then they promoted him being on Stephanie's podcast because that's obviously a priority. And now this, I think the video was really strong. Doing it in his hometown, or as close to it as you could be. Great idea. I don't know if I would have had the match go as long and be as competitive, because I don't think that served anyone, but other than that, this was a promising debut.
Well, and the match, and we don't want anybody to think it was 20 minutes long or whatever, is him and Berto, who's partners with the other fucking guy. I forget who, aren't they? They have, yes. And they're, yeah. He was just there, but at the same time, Royce did the stuff, then the heel distracted him, the other heel posted him, they got a little heat. He made his comeback. He nailed the other heel. He hit the spine buster. Boom, 1, 2, 3. It was okay. There was nothing wrong with it. And I don't even know, honestly, if it was the fact, or as you said, that it was long. It wasn't too competitive. It seemed longer than it was, and it seemed more competitive than it was, because I think he's got to loosen up. Hobbs. I'll get used to Keys later on. He needs to show more aggression in his body language and in his emotion. And remember when Jacob Fatu first came in, he was getting ready to be a beast unchained. Right now they've cleaned him up and buried him. More on that later. But since if Hobbs had been more and had more of that old fucking, attitude era type of fire to him, then even if you get posted and you're down, you've still got to try to be fighting your way back up. And when you're on the offense, there needs to be more oomph and more urgency in your body language. I think that's what he was missing here, that made it seem more competitive or a little bit longer than it actually was. Does that make sense?
It does. And again, they also brought him in as a babyface, and video aside, in the past, from what we've seen of him, he is stronger as a heel, so maybe this is also an adjustment.
Well, I would think he's been hopefully trying to adjust in the PC somewhere, but I'm not talking about being an animalistic heel type. I'm just talking about being a badass. They want to see more, or at least if he's going to start out, fucking big and strong, but kind of calm, then they need to have a point where he snaps. There needs to be a big transition because something needs to happen. What gets under his skin when somebody's gouged his eyes the third time? Well, goddamn, now you've gone too far, whatever. And then he snaps because he needs to just, when he's making that comeback and he's hitting all that shit, he needs to be more oomph. Anyhow. And now we're 2 hours and 45 minutes into the pay-per-view, and add another hour, I guess, for the pre-show. Is that how long it was, or did they do 90 minutes this time?
I think it was an hour.
Okay, so we're almost 4 hours into this show. The people in the building are the people who have watched the thing from the start. And we come to the return of the top babyface from a near career, I sound like Nick Goulas now. It'll be a near career rear-ending situation. A near career-ending issue and surgery. The babyface returns Will Ospreay against the heel. Now, this week, Jon Moxley. We never knew why Moxley and his gang were heels to begin with, trying to take over the company for its own good and pour bleach down people's throats. And then they just became baby faces, and he just quit bleaching people. And they got mad at the other group of heels that is an indistinct group that comes and goes and argues with each other, and had multiple 6 and 8 man and mixed tag matches against that group. And now, as suddenly as Ospreay returns, they realize that, wait a minute, we've made a baby face out of the guy that fucking crippled Ospreay. So when he comes back, Moxley just becomes a heel again. And now they have the showdown, Brian. Have I encapsulated that correctly?
I'm over here now. Whoops, I did it again.
So I had to see what the fuck they're going to do here, and I was hoping, can Moxley keep Ospreay from becoming a fucking just a chimpanzee in the trees? And by the same token, can Ospreay motivate Moxley to actually work like an athlete instead of a fucking like a Nick Gage wannabe fan club president? And the answer to it was both yes, half the time. Because this match, I actually, until a point, was going to say this is the best Jon Moxley match I'd ever seen. I was going to say that. At the bell, the first move, Ospreay came out of the gate, hit his fucking elbow, and knocked the fuck out of Moxley. And then stood there smiling, didn't cover him. How much time do I have? So he can beat him up some more. He's got 20 minutes. And then he hit another one, and he beat the shit out of Moxley. And I'm thinking, this is the top babyface that AEW needs. He's not a fucking nerd or a douchebag like Kenny or Paige or Spitball or whatever the fuck, right? He's got some personality, and so boom, boom, boom. And then, of course, Moxley took over with a double-arm DDT on the floor to the guy that just returned from neck surgery and is 5 minutes into the match. So besides the fact that they could have done something impactful to start the heat, then Moxley got heat, and he worked as a complete heel, and it wasn't like he wasn't doing the garbage wrestling, and the fake shit that he does. He was actually being aggressive. Did you notice that, Brian? He was being aggressive and making faces and fucking healing the guy in the ropes and shit.
Moxley's faces were over the top goofy, so I may not be the person to ask.
Well, but at least it was doing something in the way of trying to be a heel against this fucking babyface. But then he got minutes of heat on him, and I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty good. At least it makes sense. And then Ospreay just jumped up and did a flipping kick, and then was right up and did a springboard off the top rope. That's what I'm talking about. Guys like Ospreay and Kyle, they need an NXT. Unfortunately, NXT is all they got now. Because there used to be OVWs, or there used to be halfway decent trainers. But, you know, Ospreay doesn't understand. He hadn't spent a lot of time with Ricky Morton. He didn't understand everything. He had the shit kicked out of you. Suddenly you're just doing shit and you're okay. Then they started going back and forth. And then Moxley hit and for the sake of going back and forth now at this point, and Moxley gave Ospreay a pile driver and got a 2 count in a row. Idiots. They're still at the stage. This guy had what the fans know to be a legitimate near career-ending neck surgery, and milking, giving a guy a pile driver should be enough to cause fucking riot. And then Moxley suplexed him on his head, and Ospreay got back up and hit a power bomb. I said, well, now they've lost the plot. And then now they're 15 minutes in, and it's every indie match ever. And then Moxley gave Ospreay a pile driver on the steel stairs. He better be glad he had that neck surgery. That must have made it better. Because why would a human being be able to sustain all this shit, whether he'd had a bad neck or not? They have not only killed every angle they could have done to jeopardize his bad neck, they've killed every angle they could ever do to a guy that didn't even have a bad neck to begin with. But the doctor checked him after the pile driver on the stairs, and he beat the count at 9. And then Moxley hit some kind of clothesline and 2 DDTs and got a 2 count. And then he did another DDT, double arm DDT, but a little higher in the air, and got a 3 count. He won. So these fucking lunatics, their fucking top babyface is out for, he's the only one with any gumption, any personality. And he can do all the shit they like to do for now. And they bring him back after surgery for 6 months and fucking to get even with the fucking guy. And the guy not only gives him 4 moves that 4 future heels could have used, all his angles to fucking make this guy want to get even for, but after he beats the shit out of him and proves that nothing can ever hurt the guy's neck, they beat him. And they beat him flat. He didn't even cheat. The fuck?
A bit surprising. Again, Wembley's right around the corner. And a lot of people presume that's where, if you were ever going to do a big title match with Will Ospreay, that's the place to do it. He's back. That's the time to do it. And I guess it starts with Jon Moxley wrestling a Jon Moxley match and winning. I didn't like this match at all. You were a lot kinder than I would have been. I think Moxley's he's the worst wrestler in the entire world.
Well, I agree with you, but for about 7 or 8 minutes, I was like, okay, maybe they're going to he's going to get this kid over.
Sometimes he just wanders back and forth in the ring talking to himself. His facial expressions are silly, even when he's supposed to be exhibiting pain or being dazed. He can't do it without it looking goofy. His match layout is always bad. If you watch his actual work, It looks bad. There's a lot of people that are into the personality of Jon Moxley. And because of that, they say his matches are great and they love his stuff. His matches are terrible. His work is terrible. And the booking around him, I would argue, hurts the company a lot of the times. The run of the Death Riders coincided with the least amount of interest AEW fans had in AEW. And right now, MJF on top, for good and for bad. It seems that things have recovered a little bit, funny enough. And the fans are a little more into the product. But you still get this Moxley shit. It doesn't go away, whether he's the champion or in the middle of the show. And this was towards the end of the show, and it went a while. And it was deflating that Ospreay didn't get the win.
How can you not tell the story that Ospreay returns and triumphs and fucking is pointed at winning the world championship and the blah 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 in Wembley Stadium and instead this fucking idiot gets in the way again. Well, speaking of people who like to do everything and get the fuck out of there, I was intrigued by the next match because Ricochet versus Jericho. Ricochet likes to do everything and Jericho likes to get the fuck out of there. But this was his big return. And I was actually, at first I was puzzled because why would they pick Ricochet for Jericho? For obviously Jericho picked it. But then I now have realized not only is Ricochet little and motivated to bump the fuck out all over the place for him and or provide all the movement, but with Jericho wanting to be a full-fledged babyface, anything he can do to this little weasel, this crowd, whether they like Jericho or not, will still like what they're doing to him. It wasn't, again, this is still Canada. When Jericho came out, they liked to sing the song and they cheered, but it wasn't like, again, like a Punk return or a big, until he asked for it, they don't really go all out with it. And then they kind of feel bad. Oh, shit, we're letting him down. Yeah. But I think he needs higher waisted gear. Let me just throw that in at the top. No, I'm trying to be constructive. Because he is almost 60 or whatever he is, and one distracting feature of Father Time would be nullified if his pants had a waist about 4 inches higher. Brian, do you know the Muffin Man? Do you know the Muffin Man?
Chris Jericho has gotten himself into the best shape he's been in since maybe his last WWE run 10 years ago or whatever.
Except for he's still wearing them fucking 80s Bret Michaels rock and roll hip huggers, and he needs to bring them. I'm not saying Bobo Brazil. I'm not saying go full Bobo. I'm just saying somewhere at a normal fucking waist rather than Bobo halfway up under his boobages and what he's doing now, which looks like he's a Chippendale.
Like Nikolai or Bruno, they would pull it up to their belly button.
Just up to where, you know, where it cures some ills. Anyway, Jericho is smart at getting the most with the least. And he kept to people. He stalled. He took the handheld camera, but didn't really have anything to do with it. I guess they didn't work anything out. He was just trying to get the people up and be, you know, Roughhouse Fargo. And Ricochet flipped off of it around him. And I'm not going to do a play-by-play on this match, but it was very smart on Jericho's part, and still the way they did it, it wasn't half bad, and you couldn't tell Jericho was shorting any cuts or cutting any shorts. He took the big Death Valley driver on the apron that turned the tide and got the heat. And then Ricochet did nice, easy heel stuff with him. And he was working the arm when Jericho just stuck his arm over the rope and it was just signaling to Ricochet's stooge, come here, pull my arm. Did you catch that? Or if you weren't watching for 3 seconds, you missed it.
I saw that.
Oh, God damn it. It was right on the floor camera and they weren't watching his arm, but he's like, wee, 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 and then the guy comes over. And then Aubrey Ed, she's the referee. She turned around earlier and saw the guy anyway. Oh, Jesus. You know what? It's getting Derby time. I wondered has she entered the stakes races yet or anything? I had her winning by a nose last year. So Ricochet tried to work the arm, but I realized as he was trying to work the arm, he doesn't know an arm hold. Did you see that?
He didn't know exactly what to grab, but he was also in the middle of the moment, in the middle of the match.
In the middle of the moment for about 30 seconds, he had no fucking hold. He has his hands on the arm, but he has no knowledge of how to put a hold on it.
Well, he hasn't done much of that in his career.
And that's what I was realizing. I'm like, my God, he's probably never put a fucking arm bar on. And so anyway, and then Jericho made a comeback, got to Lion Salt, and the place popped for it. And then they went back and forth, and then they started getting a little busy. At one point, he gets the Lion Tamer, and then Stooge number 1 drew Aubrey Ed, and Stooge number 2 came in the ring and ran Jericho. It wasn't like he posted him or like he ran him he just kind of ran his head in the turnbuckle. Boom. And then Ricochet then got out the other side. Ricochet schoolboyed him 2 count, more 2 counts. The fans started getting tired. And then, again, Jericho busted out the Hurricane Rana off the top rope to play with the young kids and got a pop. But Ricochet just popped up from that and did a Pele kick that missed him. And then a super kick and 2 suplexes and another finish. You got a 2 count. And then they did nothing for a while. And then Ricochet backflipped off the top rope into a code breaker, which was nice. 2 count, and then nothing for a while. And then Jericho got the crab, and they did the same thing. One stooge pulled the referee, and the second stooge pulled Ricochet to the floor. So all 3 of them were on the floor where Jericho could dive over the top and they could catch him. But then they stopped him, and Ricochet came off the top rope with a shooting star press. It just, bam! 2 count. Oh, God damn it. And then Ricochet hits Jericho with an elbow, and then the Lion Salt, Jericho's move, 1, 2, 3. He had just... the heel stooge had just interfered to stop the babyface, as it looked like the babyface may be triumphing over adversity. And then Ricochet comes off the top rope with his goddamn incredible shooting star press and gets a 2 count. So then he hits him with an elbow, and then the Lion Salt, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. If they had to tell the story of him beating him with the Lion Salt, then he's an idiot for doing the shooting star press. The fucking stooge can stop him and he can hit his Lion Salt. 1, 2, 3. But because bald dipshit had to get his backflip off the top rope in, then he lost his fucking moment. It was anticlimactic, and if Jericho agreed to it, He just got beat flat instead of by nefarious means and the momentum change. Otherwise, that is just great.
Surprising finish. I thought Jericho looked just fine in there. Ricochet did what he had to do, obviously. Interference wasn't for me. And Jericho loses, and he gets to make that part of his story. He's a babyface. Like you said earlier, you don't have to do much to get cheered against Ricochet. The AEW fans know he's a douchebag. And Jericho, the smartest thing has just been the scheduling of his return. The first night in his hometown, didn't get as big a reaction as they had hoped, but still got a good reaction. Got a great reaction last week on Dynamite, wherever they were in Canada. And then here, he said he did everything he could to get them behind him. They were pretty behind him. So far, in Canada at least, Chris Jericho babyface pretty good for AEW. Let's see what happens when they come to the States and we get more promos and more angles. But I think Jericho's done a pretty good job so far as a babyface, notwithstanding the result of this match.
Well, and that's the thing is that it was right for him to do this job. First of all, he was always going to do that because that's part of making him the babyface. On the finish, I think it just lost the goddamn. They lost the plot there for a second, and it's a kind of a running theme through the show, which they do all the time. They go too far. But again, that's the thing is Jericho is smart at how to present Jericho as far as getting the most out of the least in these matches. So, because old Uncle Dave was like, well, Jericho's coming in at a place used to great matches. Well, no, almost none of them are great matches, but they're used to fucking flippy, chaos, bullshit, risk your life matches. And how's Jericho going to compete there? He did. They did a wonderful job. He learned from Bullet Bob Armstrong when he was just a wee boy watching Bob Armstrong. When Jericho was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, is 2 years younger than Chris Jericho is right now.
That is crazy. Maybe it's the haircut, but Bob Armstrong looked 10 years older than he was, and certainly older than Jericho. Although,
but Bullet's arms were bigger than Jericho's is now. But that's the thing. It's different eras, and people get used to different things. But yes, Bullet Bob, when Chris Jericho was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Bullet Bob Armstrong, the retired commissioner that would come back to wrestle for the big shows. Jericho is now 2 years older than Bob was then.
How old was Sandy Scott?
I'm going to say it between 62 and 63.
Okay, so still.
Maybe no. Sandy looked younger than he was. He may have been 65. He might have been.
Well, you brought up Chris Jericho's pants. I brought up that he's in great shape right now, the best shape he's been in a long time. Good to see. Maybe that means he's taking this all very seriously. You have to wonder, what else is he taking seriously to get into great shape, Jim? There's no easy option. It's not just, hey, let me get lipo and I'll go back on the road. It's exercise and it's diet. And of course, you can have all the ingredients you need, but you need the right instruments, the right tools, the right pots and pans to make sure that these ingredients become the healthy, nutritious, delicious meals you want. Maybe you want a sloppy, disgusting meal to be more like the Chris Jericho of 2021. I don't know. The option is yours. Help me, Jim. We're talking pots and pans from our friends at Hexclad.
Well, I'll tell you, you are Hex today is what you are, ladies and gentlemen. I said this the other day on the Experience, I will say it here on the drive-thru, that one of my most long-awaited sponsorship opportunities is for me to tell you about the Hexclad pots and pans, baby. Because Hexclad, these are the best kitchen utensils that we have ever had. And again, after I talked to you the other day, I went back to my Hexclad frying pan, and I'll have you know that on 8-ounce burger patties, I got a sear like they were over an open flame at medium heat in 4 minutes and flip that thing over and cut it down to 2 for the next 3 minutes, along with melting the cheese. And that thing was like it was flame broiled in a steakhouse. The hex-clad design spreads the heat out evenly, and it combines stainless steel, because these things are heavy duty, they're the last pan you're ever going to need, with the convenience of non-stick, because after I have fried that bad boy and got crispy bits on the edges of it the way I wanted it, I took my pickle jar that holds my grease, and you just turn that pan sideways and just take your non-stick, or not non-stick, but your plastic spatula, don't take a wire brush to these things, and it just peels all of the grease and the little bits right into the pickle jar, and boom, and then you can wash it off, and there you go. They're dishwasher safe. Well, you couldn't dishwasher safe. I don't think this thing could be damaged by a hurricane, but metal utensil safe. But I still say, even though they say you don't have to baby them, I still say don't be a prick in the kitchen. They're oven safe up to 900 degrees, and they've got over 50,000 five-star reviews from the 1 million customers, including Gordon Ramsay, who is as notorious a prickly prick as I am. But we all love these things. Stace went crazy over the wok for her stir fry, and the soup pans, as they say, or what do they call them? The pots, the saucepans, not soup pans, super sauce. The saucepan is what I'm saying. Those things are excellent too, and non-stick. You can do eggs on low heat. You can, like I said, fry that stuff on medium. You don't have grease splashing everywhere because you're having to turn the heat up to cook the food because the pan is the shits. And these things, as I said, they will last you for the rest of your life, and depending on how old you are, probably a good deal longer. So figure them in the will to somebody. And if somebody tries to climb in your window at night, keep one of these sitting next to the bed. You brain a son of a bitch with this, he'll live to see the day that he regrets it.
Again, these are for cooking, and let's talk about cooking, because that's what we're here to talk about here specifically with the...
Well, he'll be cooked.
Wonderful. Metaphorically, let's get back to food.
His goose would be cooked if he stuck his head through a Hex-clad home's window. Hex-Clad's 12-piece set is the ultimate all-in-one cookware upgrade. 3 versatile pans, 2 saucepans, and a family-sized stock pot where you can get literally an entire family inside this pot and just cook the shit out of them. And each of them comes with its own lid. You're going to have every tool that you will need to cook for a crowd or to master any recipe, all with the patented laser-etched hexagonal steel ridges boosting your searing power. You can tell I get excited. But you'll cook the fuck out of some cheeseburgers too, and easy to clean. So, right now we can save you some money. Go to hexclad.com, HEXCLAD.com/JCE, and you're going to get 10% off your order with that link. Hexclad.com/JCE to get 10% off the 12-piece set. And again, these things, you might as well just figure them into a situation where you're going to hand them down to your inheritors and descendants and things. Your grandkids will be frying cheeseburgers on these things, as long as there is still a civilization by that time.
Great looking pans, nice to look at and even touch before you cook. I don't sound like a moron here, but
You have some kind of goddamn
they're cool. They look cool. You just want to put your hand in there, but you got to make sure that it's not
You just want to put your hand in there. Don't touch it if it's hot.
Well, again, we love them here. Suzanne is over the moon about these things. She made some hamburgers for us the other day, and the cleanup is so quick and so easy. Very popular here, as they will be with you, we are sure. Hexclad. Jim, one more time, that promo code for a great deal.
Hexclad.com/JCE. And you're going to freak out when I'm going to bring this up. You know, you're going to get us in trouble. I'm going to be non-judgmental and completely professional about all of this, except when I scoff at one thing.
Well, we still have one more match, the big one,
Yeah.
for the AEW World Championship. The champion MJF versus Kenny Omega.
And I did come back, and I can't remember how many hours it was later. I said, all right. Again, MJF tries to put together stuff that, and I'm not going to sit here and praise MJF. People are still on that kick. I've already given up on him. Remember, he gobble gobble. One of us. He's one of the freaks. But he tries. He tries. That's what pride's something out of Kenny here. He tries to do shit that at least you don't think somebody's gonna fucking get killed. Right? He tries to stay away from the ridiculous high risk shit. At least if he's taking it. If somebody else is diving off the roof, I guess he'll go ahead and let him. But in this match, I've said to you before we went on the air, the only thing I said about this match was, I have never seen a motherfucker look as petrified in the ring at one point as I did MJF, obviously thinking, is this motherfucker going to kill me or not? Did you notice the part of the match that I determined that on?
Was it around the time of the top rope one-winged angel?
Well, yeah, there you go. Whatever the fuck that, all of that top rope stuff, where they got up there and tried as best they could to help each other balance, and at one point, MJF pitched forward, and thankfully his shoulder landed on the turnbuckle, so that he wouldn't go head first to the floor, and then dipshit got back under him. Holy Christ. Anyway. Before we get there, I will make a compliment to something good here. MJF had a nice demonic-themed new robe for the occasion with the pointy things and the fucking cowl, and the 666s looked like the German Goo Girls logo. It was very avant-garde. And they did the spot before the bell where the referee searched and or demanded that MJF give up the diamond ring, which he did. And the referee put it in his pocket. So we were ready to go ring the bell on the Devil versus Douchey McBaggington. And I try, Brian. I try. But Kenny has always had the weird, unnatural postures and gestures and movements and facial expressions and the unnecessary pointing and pounding on the mat and this whole, God, he's a diver, and now competing on a 30-meter dive, you know, they just glare at me. But now he looks so worn down and hunchbacked and frazzle-haired. The first spot was an 18-phase bullshit spot. It was all Omega stuff, and he stumbled on one of them. And then MJF took a walk through half the arena, but I mean, at least this was a clear heel and baby face. MJF would do an eye gouge, and Kenny would do a Hurricane Rana. But within minutes, they're doing indie shit on the floor, drop toe holds into a chair. That was one of the big ECW inventions that every indie show copied. And then Kenny's backflipping off the barricade. They're 3 minutes into this thing. It just doesn't make sense. Kenny, another thing that I used to like about MJF was when he had an opponent, he could have a realistic, incredible, athletic wrestling match with a guy that could work, where he was a heel and the guy was the babyface, the blah blah blah. Kenny brings a table over the railing, which I think got one of the biggest pops of the night. They just want furniture. And he laid it on MJF while MJF is laying on the floor, and MJF had to pull it into the proper place and sit there and hold it on camera while Kenny did the double stomp off of it. So we're mud show in the first 5 minutes on a big time pay-per-view. And it'd been minutes since either one of them had been in the ring. To your point earlier, were all of these matches no DQ? No count out, no common fucking sense, lazy booking. Then I can't see that, can't unsee. Kenny's punches are so, the guy can do a high dive off the fucking, the cliffs in Mexico on Wide World of Sports. He can't throw a fucking punch. And the selling is he's reacting like he's a video game character or some of this Japanese anime that he. But at the same time, then in the middle of the heat, suddenly he comes alive for 10 punches in the corner, starts doing a running spot, and then MJF stops him with a pile driver. But seconds after the pile driver, Kenny does his whole comeback, and every move he knows, he gets a 2 count. Am I overstating this, Brian? I feel like I'm droning on.
No, again, this match droned on. This match went almost 40 minutes, and they kicked out of everything. You know, I was going to ask you, and I'll save it for later. Well, I'll save it for now. This has been a problem in both companies, and obviously on the indies and everywhere. The era of do everything for minutes on end, and both guys kick out of everything in 2. Use your finisher sometimes multiple times within a few minutes, and everyone kicks out. Can you take a step back? Can we turn that back? Because when it's happening everywhere, it defeats the purpose. The purpose wasn't Steamboat and did it. Now every match should be like that match. It's too much, and they're killing each other. You're seeing it, and everyone kicks out of. This is the second pay-per-view in a row with a 40-minute MJF match.
Here's the thing. Then they started doing the shit that I mentioned earlier, but first they're going to get up on the turnbuckles, but it's obvious that MJF has to help Kenny get MJF up on his shoulder and to climb the buckle, but then slipped. After, again, kind of looking scared shitless on that one, but then they climb up again. And Kenny carefully lets MJF pick him up for a
I'm Mark
tombstone,
Timberton. I'm
climb up again,
Mark
and then
Timberton.
they do 10 different fucking moves in the ring and reverse Hurricane Ranas to each other where they pop up, and MJF hit a Canadian destroyer on Kenny, and Kenny just popped up to his feet and gave MJF a knee lift and got a 2 count. But didn't even acknowledge that the move had been delivered to him. And they weren't 20 minutes in at that point, and I wrote, this is fucking video game wrestling I've ever seen. And I started making my grocery list for Thunder over Louisville with this kind of on in the background.
It also may have been the slowest paced Kenny Omega match at times, because although it didn't go really slow, you could tell they needed an extra second or 2 at times for Kenny to be able to move to do something. Or who was it that was like bent over just waiting for like a minute for, or it wasn't a minute, but I mean, there was a lot of like, okay, we have something we were going to do, now we got to wait to set it up.
I think at various points, Kenny has been over and waited a minute, but they both did it in this particular thing. And then they went back to when they'd already almost fucked up before. They went back to the top thing again, where Kenny is trying to give MJF the one-winged fairy off the fucking top rope or whatever, but he almost lost him, and MJF is caught on the turnbuckle before going head first to the floor, and then as Kenny is trying to get under him and get him up there, the face on MJF was like, oh my God, is this motherfucker going to kill me? And he gave him that thing off the top rope, which is risky enough to do it right. Landing in a folded up fashion like that off the top rope in the corner of the wrestling ring is not a thing you want to be doing regularly. And then MJF rolled out. It was a fake move that could really hurt you, delivered in an obviously cooperative fashion. And then they went back to the match like after a while, like nothing happened, and they kept kicking out of everything. And then Kenny knocked the referee out. And then MJF hit Kenny in the balls and went to pick the referee's pocket for the diamond ring. Besides the fact that MJF is not a natural pickpocket, it took him a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, it took him 30 seconds or whatever. Kenny was on his feet in the corner, just not looking on purpose by the time that MJF got back to him after being kicked in the fucking balls 30 seconds ago. And then MJF swung and missed the punch, and Kenny knee lifted him and hit the fucking one-wing deal and covered him, and the referee counted to 10, and referee number 2, or not the referee, but the crowd counted to 10, and referee number 2 came in. And it was a 2 count. And then referee number 2 that's run in is trying to tell, whoever, MJF or Kenny, no, it was a 2 count. Keep it. The other referee is still in the ring dead, and the referee's not going over and check on a dead referee. So then they go to the apron, and the crowd starts chanting, table, table, because there's still a table sitting ringside that's been unmolested. And Kenny is going to give the one-winged wingy-dingy to MJF off the apron of the ring, but MJF turns him over instead, hits a good shot with the ring, and tombstones him off the apron, through the table to the floor, in what looked to me to be as much of a shoot tombstone driver as you could give anybody. And he laid it right on his fucking head. And then MJF threw him up onto the apron, and of course Kenny has to be alive to help. He can't sell that. MJF immediately picks him up, and he has to jump up on the apron, and then hits the sinker pile driver. 1, 2, 3. If you, again, even if they didn't change anything else, if you had MJF give Kenny that goddamn tombstone pile driver off the apron through the table to the floor and just let MJF roll in and say, count him, referee, and count him out and sling sweat on him and announce that Kenny's back in the fucking hospital, people would have believed it, would they not? They would have. I mean, did that not look to you like, well, I think he should be kind of dead?
The table spot looked rough, and like you said, I don't know about it being a shoot, but it's hard to protect anyone, and it looked like it was kind of, we're doing this no matter what, no matter how protected you are or not. Kenny Omega, I've been saying it for a while that I don't know how many more matches like this he has in him. He looked pretty rough in there. MJF was the perfect opponent for him, because MJF can kind of work everyone's style and get the best out of him. Although sometimes that's his detriment, is that he's doing everyone else's match. MJF wins 40 minutes, moves on to Darby this Wednesday, and then who knows what for Wembley. But this was I don't know. This didn't feel as big as some of the AEW pay-per-views feel to their audience. And
what else they gonna do? What else can you do to any other human being?
heels won everything. Ricochet beat Jericho. Moxley beat Ospreay. MJF beat Omega. FTR beat Edge and Christian. Darby won, but who's talking about that match?
Yeah.
The Bucks won because the heels started fighting with each other. Yeah, I mean, it was basically AEW putting the heels all over the place.
The only people can beat the heels are the other heels.
Any final words on MJF and Omega and AEW Dynasty?
And that match was for the dogs.
Indeed, Jim, what a wonderful transition. Indeed it was, and in fact, Kenny Omega was once for the dogs in the sense that he took poor Larry the dog and handed him off to Omega. But what we're talking about here, Jim, is a way to feed your dog and feed your dog with something that isn't just cheap dog food, something that is human grade, made by human chefs. That's one of the guarantees.
Yes, and made from human beings, folks. I'll tell you what. It's Soylent Green, but it's easy to store and serve while at the same time fresh and healthy. Where you got to have the doggy chef come from the doggy restaurant and cook up Fido's meal right there on the stove, and it's fresh and healthy, but you know, also that chef is starting to track mud in the kitchen, and he's just annoying to talk to. So now you can eliminate the middleman. The human chefs in the human grade kitchen using human grade food have made fresh and healthy food that's easy to store and serve for your precious poochies. Sundays for dogs. And that's why Sundays was founded by a veterinarian and a mother, Dr. Tori Waxman. She had married a Dalmatian of some repute years ago, purebred.
Let's not say anything.
And then she's a mother of a puppy.
The mother of a puppy in terms of, it's her puppy, not that she
Yes.
gave birth to a litter.
She got tired, Brian, of seeing so-called premium dog food full of fillers and synthetics. So Sundays is air-dried real food made in a human-grade kitchen using fresh ingredients, and every bite of Sundays is clean and made from real meat, fruits, and veggies with no kibble, no weird ingredients, no possum toenails, no rabbit sphincters, and all the other stuff that they put in questionable dog food, because your puppy deserves food made with care, not in the interest of cheapness and easiness. You should be ashamed of yourselves, parents. And you just scoop and serve this stuff. No freezer, no thawing, no prep, no mess. Just fueling their happiest, healthiest days. And you can notice a difference in their demeanor and their expressions, as Howard Finkel would say. They could be more calm or focused. They could have less itching, possibly no eye boogers, and more importantly, better smelling shit. Because they have had numerous studies done. People have been smelling shit in the special shit smelling area of the Sundays for Dogs factory. That's where they have the dogs. Now they have the test dogs, and they have them poop in a specific place.
They do not have test dogs. They do not have.
And then you got to go through and sniff.
Laboratory. They don't have any of this.
Well, if they don't do research, how are they possibly going to find these things out?
Jim, what they have is dog food that I trust in my home for my dog. Swami loves it when I get that yellow cereal box that has Sundays for Dog in it. For dog. Sundays for dogs. There are many dogs.
Yes.
Not just mine, but all dogs.
All dogs.
All dogs need food.
But boy, when you come in hungover late at night about 3 o'clock in the morning and get that cereal box out and pour some in milk, are you surprised? It's tasty, too. So right now, folks, make the switch to Sundays. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/JCE50, and you're going to get 50% off your first order. That's the code JCE50 at checkout. 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com. And you can get your Poochie the same diet that Brian Last eats in his own home in the middle of the night when the lights are off, whether he knows it or not. It could happen.
I don't know what we're saying, but again,
So this is the actual thing here. This was a famous story in my family. Mama Cornette was asleep in bed at night when my dad had come home late from a newspaper function, and he didn't want to wake her up, but he was hungry, so he got in the refrigerator, and oh, there's some corned beef hash. And he made him a sandwich, and the next day he said, boy, that was a good sandwich I had last night. She said, what? That was the corned beef. That was the leftover canned kennel ration that they fed Jock, our Cocker Spaniel. And he never realized it. But he never had another one of those sandwiches. Sundaysfordogs.com.
why did you guys name him Jock?
Well, I wasn't around then. Jock predated me.
Why did they name him Jock?
I don't know. I never was cognizant enough to ask that question. But he was a cute little dog. He lived to be 16. Fell in the neighbor's fish pond one time and froze stiff in the wintertime. They had to thaw him out in front of the fireplace. And
That's awful.
a couple of the other neighborhood dogs attacked him one time. That dog down the road here that my mother ended up chasing out of the neighborhood. He had tetanus and locked jaw, and my dad backed over him in the driveway, asleep underneath the car.
Like the Darby
And they
Allin
had
dogs.
They had to put a pin in his hip, and my dad had a car wreck, and he had a pin in the same fucking hip. And he lived to be 16, and he was blind and deaf, and we had to have him put to sleep. But you won't experience these things if you feed your Jock Sundaysfordogs.com/JCE50. You're going to get 50% off your first order.
That's right, you will. Sundays for Dogs, once again, tidy everything up. We trust them here in this house. Food that Swami loves, your dog will love it too. Sundays for Dogs. That great promo code I just had here.
JCE50.
That's right.
Get a box for Jock.
Sundaysfordogs.com/JCE50. A lot of people's eyebrows were raised this past week on WWE Monday Night Raw, specifically the opening segment, but there's a lot of notable things to talk about here on this episode, but let's talk about WWE Raw.
Well, they were in Houston, and I don't know, Houston, do we have a problem? I don't know. I mean, there was some, they had some problems on the show, but there's also, again, some things that lit up the various interwebs with the, especially with the guy who started the program, our friend CM Punk. As I said, they were in Houston, Texas, 11,769 people. And they show the guys walking in, and then there's Punk walking in, and the announcer saying he'll be here later on, and he just walks right through Gorilla and comes straight out. And the people, he gets the fucking pop, right? That's a surprise. And he sits cross-legged in the ring, and they chant CM Punk, and they chant OTC. And he's reminiscent of the pipe bomb where he sat cross-legged on the stage. But then he'd get up and move around. And I kind of, normally I hate it when people just wander around while they're talking, but this kind of worked because he looked like he was just venting at people. But he started out mentioning everything that would have made Vince McMahon's head explode. Right? Houston is a pro wrestling town. It's Paul Bosch territory. And Paul Bosch's name got a pop.
Wasn't it in 2026? I was looking for that when he said the name, and he got the pop. It was good to see.
Well, I think that there have been so many local TV specials and retrospectives that I think the general population, if they're at a wrestling show, they're familiar. Now, I don't know about the average 16-year-old, but I think
We will keep in mind and remember that Barry Goldwater has faith in us. He has faith that you and I have the ability and the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny. Thank you very much.
WCW was, without a doubt, one of the greatest wrestling promotions of all time, and it all began in the late 80s when the promotion was technically first formed. But how did it all happen? Well, join us as we take a deep dive into the entire story in the WCW in 1988, a year in review. Yes, before it was known as World Championship Wrestling, the promotion that by the late 80s served as the crown jewel for the National Wrestling Alliance went by the name of Jim Crockett Promotions, the local territory covering the North Carolina area. And the reason this was considered the crown jewel for the NWA was because it was home to the biggest stars of the era who weren't already signed up to a contract with Vince McMahon, namely Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Sting, Lex Luger, the Road Warriors, and the Midnight Express. And it would be those key players who were, for the most part, on display for the territory's first big show of the year, Bunkhouse Stampede, held live at the Nassau Coliseum on January 24th. Yes, this show would see a number of notable bouts featuring the core members of the promotion, the first of which was actually a dark match pitting then up-and-comer Sting and his tag team partner Jimmy Garvin against the Sheepherders, a duo better known today by most fans as the Bushwhackers. No surprises for figuring out that the babyfaces won here then, and no prizes for guessing that once the show fully started, there would be plenty more moments of note still to come. After all, the next contest saw Nikita Koloff and Bobby Eaton go to war over the NWA World Television title, and in the end, run out the clock at 20 minutes for a time limit draw. Was it a controversial choice to have the match get no satisfying finish? To some, yes. In fact, to those people, it was just another sign that head booker Dusty Rhodes' time with the pencil needed to come to an end, as he'd grown a little long in the tooth in the role by then. That said, it wasn't like Dusty couldn't still book a good finish when he needed to, something our next match would show, as this one saw Larry Zbyszko defeat Barry Windham to become NWA Western States Heritage Champion. And that wasn't the end of the babyfaces getting the wins over heel champions on this show, as the next bout saw Road Warrior Hawk take part in a rare singles match when he challenged then NWA World Champion Ric Flair one-on-one. Of course, while he would win this one, it would only be via disqualification. And so, as per the rules of the NWA, the belt would not change hands. But that wasn't the end of the show. No, there was still one more competition left to come, the main event, if you will. And that main event would see Dusty Rhodes, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, Tully Blanchard, Road Warrior Animal, the Barbarian, Ivan Koloff, and the Warlord all take part in a Bunkhouse Stampede match. What was a Bunkhouse Stampede match? Well, it was basically a battle royal with the added twist that wrestlers would have to wear bunkhouse gear, namely jeans, t-shirts, and cowboy boots while fighting. That said, this particular version of the bout was extra special because while all the ones which had taken place before happened inside a normal ring, this one was happening inside a ring surrounded by a steel cage. How do you throw someone over the top rope when there's a cage there? That was something fans were going to find out, and when they did, they weren't too impressed, as in order to eliminate people, the wrestlers involved had to either awkwardly get their opponents over the top of the cage or through the cage door. Yes, this was like something Vince Russo would have booked at the turn of the millennium, and was yet another example of the overbooked messes Dusty Rhodes shows were turning into. And to make matters worse, it was the American Dream who ended up winning this one. A seemingly obvious decision given that he was the babyface, but a decision fans were now tiring of seeing nonetheless. Clearly, something had to change then, as with booking generally considered to be at a low point and ticket sales to shows getting soft as a result, Jim Crockett was going to have to pivot away from Dusty and find a new top babyface to replace him. And luckily, he would find this very person sooner rather than later, because at their next major show of the year, the inaugural Clash of the Champions on March 27th, a certain Steve Borden was about to rise to the occasion. But before we get into that, we have to add some context as to why Clash of the Champions was such a big deal at the time. And that's because it was a pay-per-view caliber event held on free TV. Sure, it might not be uncommon to turn on Dynamite nowadays and regularly see 4- and 5-star classics. And it may be an all too familiar occurrence to see major storyline developments take place on Raw or SmackDown every week. But back then, TV was largely made up of jobber squash matches and promo segments designed to hype up fans so they would go attend the house shows in their area. With Clash of the Champions, though, Well, the game was changed, as this was going to feature big-time matches with big-time consequences, and it was all going to be free of charge. Why was Jim Crockett Promotions doing such a thing? Well, it was a shot fired back across the bow at UWF, as this one was going to air on the same night as WrestleMania 4, with Crockett hoping that a free show competing with Vince McMahon's pay-per-view would siphon away some of his viewers and pay him back for the whole attempt to kill Starrcade the year prior by bullying pay-per-view providers into holding Survivor Series instead. Yes, years before the Monday Night Wars, the two promotions were already at each other's throats. And given the show they were going against, JCP were extra incentivized to knock it out of the park. So when fans tuned in their droves once it came time for the show to air live from the Greensboro Coliseum that night, then they were treated to something special. And that specialness began with the College Rules match between Mike Rotunda and Jimmy Garvin, a match which would ultimately see the future Irwin R. Shyster get the win after 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Then, once that was over, it was time for the NWA United States Tag Team titles to be put on the line as champions the Midnight Express faced off against the Fantastics duo of Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. Who reigned victorious in this one? Well, that would be the incoming champs. That said, the other tag title holders of Jim Crockett Promotions wouldn't be so lucky, because when it came time for Four Horsemen members Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard to defend their NWA World Tag Team titles later on in the show, they'd find themselves falling to the babyface alliance of Lex Luger and Barry Windham. But that wasn't the match people had come to see on this night. No, after the trio of the Road Warriors and Dusty Rhodes defeated the Powers of Pain and Ivan Koloff in a barbed wire match, it was time for the real main event. A main event which would see NWA World Champion Ric Flair put his belt on the line against rookie sensation Sting. And if you were paying attention during Sting's 2024 retirement tour, then you'll know this was the night he established himself as a main eventer going forward with an absolutely star-making performance. And the way he did this was to spend 45 minutes taking the Nature Boy to the absolute limit. Seriously, of all the bouts Steve Borden would ever have in his lengthy and illustrious career, this one might be the most important. That said, it didn't mean he'd walk out the champion. No, after the time limit expired at the 45-minute mark, Slick Rick was able to escape with the gold, even if he would have to later admit his opponent had more than proved himself by hanging with him for so long. Yes, all of a sudden, it felt like despite all of the that were happening backstage, and the financial issues which were causing Jim Crockett to sweat as the success of Hogan-era WWF caused him to slide closer and closer towards bankruptcy, the territory had a true ray of hope again in the form of the Stinger. Would this be enough to turn the ship around, however? Well, that's something we would start to get an idea of when the annual Crockett Cup came around in April. Now, the Crockett Cup, to give it its full name, the Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup Tag Team Tournament, was a knockout-style tag team tournament held by the territory every year in honor of their founder, Jim Crockett Sr., with the gimmick by this point being that the winners would receive a prize of $1 million. One team who wouldn't be appearing in this tournament, however, would be that of Lex Luger and Barry Windham, because not long after winning the NWA World Tag Team titles from Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, they'd end up dropping them back to the group in mid-April. But during the rematch, Windham turned heel on his partner and became the newest member of the Four Horsemen. How would this affect the brackets of the Crockett Cup then? Well, instead of Luger teaming up with Windham, he'd team up with Sting.
I've been needing more art in my bedroom and recently painted this canvas. However, I wasn't quite sure the best way to hang it, so I turned to ChatGPT. It gave me a list of all the materials I needed and an easy step-by-step. I'm so happy with how it turned out.
$76 per hour. That's how much the average bookkeeping business owner makes, according to a recent survey by QuickBooks. That's right. If you're willing to learn how to use a free program called QuickBooks,
and that wouldn't be the only last-minute change made to the proceedings either, because on top of this, Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff ended up losing their spot when the son of a plumber was kayfabe suspended after hitting Jim Crockett Jr. with a baseball bat on the March 26th episode of their soon-to-be prophetically named weekly television show, World Championship Wrestling. So because of that, by the time the first night of the Crockett Cup aired on April 22nd, the main players were Luger and Sting, the Four Horsemen, the Fantastics, and the Powers of Pain. And as it happened, it would be these four teams who found themselves in the semifinals come night two, with that round seeing Luger and Sting come out victorious over the Powers of Pain, All while Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson got the win over the Fantastics. Before the final pitting those two duos against one another would come, though, there were other bouts to get through on night two, with one of the biggest of these being the bull rope match between the Midnight Rider and J.J. Dillon. Who was the Midnight Rider? Well, as we'd all find out soon enough, he was a poorly disguised Dusty Rhodes. Yes, this was another Russo-rific way to get the American Dream on the show and have him be involved in a big-time singles bout. But while he would end up winning this one, it wasn't exactly well received, just as the bout which came before it, a blindfold match between Jimmy Garvin and Kevin Sullivan, also received tepid reviews. That said, things could still be salvaged if the two main events delivered as hoped, the first of which was Nikita Koloff challenging Ric Flair for the NWA World's title. Would this one win fans over? Kind of, as it was a pretty good match. Exactly what you'd expect from 80s Flair. Of course, in the end, it would see him walk out retaining, though, because despite losing to the babyface here, the disqualification nature of the finish meant he held on to his belt regardless. When it came to the actual main event, however, fans would be sent home much happier because after a battle which waged on for 16 minutes and 5 seconds, Sting and Lex Luger were able to come out on top of Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, with this making them not only the winners of the Crockett Cup, but the last team to do so up until it was revived again in 2019 by Billy Corgan. That's right. As a result of the impending change in management, the Crockett Cup, like with many traditions in Jim Crockett Promotions, was soon to become a thing of the past. And it wasn't just old traditions which were becoming a thing of the past for the Southern Wrestling Company either now, because as a result of Vince McMahon having a seemingly endless checkbook and continuing on with his desire to poach away every talent he could, the Powers of Pain would leave JCP to go join the WWF in July, right before the planned blow-off of their feud with the Road Warriors at the Great American Bash on July 10th. Not that this would be the end of the world, though, because Jim Crockett and Dusty Rhodes had a backup plan for this show. And that backup plan would see the Road Warriors team up with Dr. Death Steve Williams and Ron and Jimmy Garvin to take on Ivan Koloff, Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda, Al Perez, and the Russian Assassin in a Tower of Doom match. What was a Tower of Doom match? Well, it was basically a triple-decker cage match, similar to the one WCW would later use in 2000 during the infamous David Arquette as World Champion storyline. And unfortunately, while this one wasn't quite as badly received as that latter bout, it wasn't far off because, with the rules being unclear and it being hard for fans to see what was going on at the best of times, the whole thing quickly devolved into a bit of a mess. Still, at least the rest of the card would have some highlights, right? Well, yes, because in an event which aired live from the Baltimore Arena, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard were able to have a pretty great NWA World Tag Team title defense against Sting and Nikita Koloff. And after that was over, the Midnight Express proved they still had it when they defeated the Fantastics to become NWA United States Tag Team Champions. Then, as if this wasn't enough, the semi-main event would see Dusty Rhodes finally make his pay-per-view return from his kayfabe suspension by challenging Barry Windham for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. What were the circumstances surrounding this match? Well, after teaming up with Sting to take on NWA World Tag Team Champions Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard on June 8th's Clash of the Champions 2 Miami Mayhem, the same show which saw the Fantastics beat the Sheepherders and the Garvin Brothers beat the Varsity Club, the American Dream found himself getting screwed out of the victory by an interfering Barry Windham. So because of that, the battle the two were about to engage in had a lot of bad blood surrounding it. But no matter how motivated Dusty was, in the end it would be the younger star who got the better of him when after 15 minutes and 55 seconds, the champ retained. Not that this would be the end of Dusty's involvement in the show, however, because during the main event he'd be there in spirit via the dreaded Dusty finish. Yes, after spending 23 minutes wearing down Ric Flair enough to get him in a torture rack, Lex Luger made the champion submit, only for this win to then be immediately reversed when the referee decided that as a result of the total package's excessive bleeding, the bout would retroactively be judged a no contest, as per Maryland State Athletic Commission guidelines. Yes, what ended up becoming the final ever pay-per-view for Jim Crockett Promotions closed out in limp fashion, and as such, served as a example of why the territory was in the state it was in.
The police officer at the scene told me to never sue the driver who crashed into me after my car accident. I took his advice and got got $100,000 for my accident without suing, without going to court, and without dealing with insurance directly. At first, I thought he was out of his mind. Everyone sues after accidents, right? That's just what you do. That's how you get justice. That's how you get paid. But this officer looked at me and said, you can do it that way if you want. Spend the next year and a half in court. Pay thousands up front. Hope it works out. Or I can tell you about something most people don't know exists. I asked him what he meant. He said police officers see hundreds of car accidents. They see what happens to victims who sue. Most of them wait over a year, spend thousands, and end up frustrated. But then he started hearing about accident victims who were getting massive payouts in as little as 30 days without suing anyone. No court, no insurance battles. Just results. He called it the cheat code for getting paid after an accident. I was skeptical, but I figured if a police officer who sees this stuff every day is telling me there's a better way, maybe I should listen. If you've been in any car accident in the past year, even a passenger, you need to hear what he told me, because it completely changed how I handled my case. And it could do the same for you.
I can't play those. Got our exercise in. Hope everyone has a good day. See you guys tomorrow. Beat the cheesy count. Bye!